Claris Talk AI. Hello, Cris.
What's up, Matt? How are you, man? Long time.
I'm doing well, and apparently I read a grammar book, and the answer to that can either be good or well, and they're both correct.
Oh, well, good.
Yes.
You see what I did
Uh,
there?
so we've got some exciting stuff that we're going to be talking about. Obviously, the new
Yeah.
ChatGPT things that have come out,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
which actually is wide-ranging, not just like a new one thing. Before that, though, little plugs I've got. I'm going to be speaking. Going to be doing a class at Rome FileMaker Week, October 9th.
Coming right
FileMaker
up.
AI integration class. So that's the class you can buy on their website. And in Malmö, Sweden, I'm going to be there in person and teaching a class, also semantic search and AI integration on November 17th. And all my
Fantastic.
classes are on Navarre.training. And the other thing that I'm kind of excited about, which is pretty nerdy, is I started a YouTube video series and blog called the FileMaker Opinion Page.
Oh,
You can search for that on
interesting.
YouTube or see it on my website. And the most recent video I made is making a strong opinion case on why I think people should stop using the button tool and switch over
Oh,
to
I
the
saw
single
that. Yeah,
segment
I
button
saw
bar
that.
tool 100%. So anyway,
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't know a bigger champion for calculated buttons using the calculated feature on buttons than you. So,
I love it.
a compelling dialogue. Well, it sounds like we're doing a lot of the same stuff, just not at the same time. I have a Claris webinar live stream, whatever, community live coming
Yes.
up on October 24th, which is going to be an intro. It's online. It's an intro to FileMaker and AI with special guest Ronny Rios, friend of the podcast.
Mhm.
And we are going to be doing like literally like where do I start? Like I keep hearing all this stuff about semantic search and all these new features. Just where do I begin? How do I do this? And then just step through it. It's like a
Yep.
90-minute presentation. It's free. And we get as far as you can reasonably in 90 minutes and still having an interactive dialogue. And Ronnie will be part of it as well too. So looking forward
That's
to that on
cool.
the
That's
the
cool.
24th. Yeah.
I
And
would,
then
yeah, yeah, continue.
well, and then, they announced Claris Engage, right? And so I'll be doing a training day at the US. That's Claris Engage in Austin in March of 2025. It seems like it's very far away, but registration is now open. And they anticipate that the FileMaker and AI training day might go fast. So if you're interested in this and you're going to be in Austin, you should probably sign up. I'm also going to have Ronny Rios be a special guest for that. And that's like a day-long version where we do all sorts of stuff. We like get into prompting techniques and well, we start off with vocabulary, then some prompting techniques, and then we dive into the FileMaker stuff. Then I show some cool, inspiring real-world use cases of AI. And then Ronnie actually comes in with some stuff he's not going to be showing during the actual session, like the what's next. So really, the way to see the most AI stuff is to probably go to training day this year. And it's interesting because
Hmm.
training day is at the end,
Oh,
not at the beginning. So
interesting.
I think that has something to do with the format. So
Yeah, oh, that could make sense. Yeah. The classes I'm going to be teaching are probably going to be covering less AI stuff, but they're going to be totally hands-on. I'm going to share my screen as little as possible and have the students take turns actually integrating AI into their systems. So
awesome.
I'll give a during the class I'll have an API key that people can use if they don't have an account, blah blah blah. Okay, let's talk about our subjects today. We have
Yeah,
37 things on the agenda,
as
maybe
always.
just three.
Yep. We could chain them all together though.
Chain.
See what I did there?
I saw
Well,
what you did there.
so
Maybe
I want to talk about this concept of chain of thought, and this is going to be the through line of like all of our topics here today. But when I say chain of thought to you, Matt, what does that mean to you with your background in thinking and philosophy?
my philosophy classes from 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Uh, I certainly didn't come up then, but I think from some of the other science books and stuff that I like to nerd out on, it's actually not a phrase that's really that I have used or thought of much in life. But chain
How about
is
train of
always like,
thought or tree of thought? Like these are all the same
yeah,
concept, really.
yeah. It's basically sort of taking different types of things and making sure that when you stack them, they're correctly linked to the thing before, which is very much Aristotelian logic, um,
Yep.
or Claristotelian logic.
Oh,
This
hey-oh,
is going to get way
Aristotle,
too
you meaning.
punny if we keep doing this.
This
Uh,
is a bad start.
yeah,
But
so basically, yeah, like taking the input of one thing or the output of one thing into the input of another,
Yep.
double checking your results, like making sure. Yeah, that's what chain of thought means to me.
Yeah, I think people are probably familiar with the concept when it comes to train of thought. I think that might be one of those, like, you know how in the US
That's
we like
different.
mess stuff up, but it's actually
Yeah.
what you just described. The train of thought means that I have this consistent through line, and I don't have these like weird non sequiturs or
Huh.
right edges in my
Train of
discussion
thought to me
points.
means just one thought. Like,
But that's the whole point, as long as it
yeah.
remains one thought. So I think what happened was somehow we started referring to train of thought and then we actually said chain of thought. But the reality of it is chain of thought actually means something
Mhm.
in AI. And we're going to
What?
talk about that
What?
today.
Tell me.
So chain of
You want to
thought
start with
is
it?
really, it's actually kind of a simple idea. It's where instead of just interacting with one of these large language models with just a prompt and a completion, we refer to that as like zero shotting,
Mhm,
in a
mhm.
somewhat pejorative manner on the podcast here. What if you could force the model to go through a reasoning step or a series of reasoning steps where it comes up with an explanation and then arrives at an answer?
Mhm.
And it's almost like intermediate steps before arriving at the final answer. So you're kind of intercepting the thought process, so to speak, in between. And so by the concept that this is rooted in is by forcing models to go through reasoning, sort of a reasoning pathway,
Mhm.
you're ensuring that they do not overfit on extraneous patterns. That's where
Great.
hallucinations come from, is it's reaching out to try to fill in gaps with these weird extraneous things.
Great.
And so this way you can answer new questions that it's not seen before. You can train it on how to think and address other questions that might be totally new and novel to it, maybe, and of course, not even in its training set. And since we know models are not databases, this approach should be quite important. So in summary, at a really high level, because of the way they're trained, the language models are trained, and they're not databases, right? Remember that. Apparently can't say that enough. One of my family members just texted me some like thing where there was a massive misunderstanding about data
Yeah.
privacy and language models. But this way, they seem to perform, and actually, in my own experience, they do, and this is widely accepted in the AI industry. They seem to perform way better at NLP tasks if you force them to do this kind of chain of thought concept up
Mhm.
front. So it really, you're having to think step by step. And there's a bit of a history here, but first I wanted to see if this sounds familiar to you before I jump into some of these
Yeah, yeah.
things.
And this is all part of the new ChatGPT 1.0 model that came out.
Yeah, actually, what we're doing in a somewhat coy manner here is you and I are going to move into the whole what is ChatGPT's O1
Oh, 1,
model.
not 1.0. Yeah.
Yeah, so O1 has been released since we did our pod. It's probably only a couple weeks old, and we're going to explain what's actually happening in it because it's not just like GPT-5, it's like a whole nother thing. And really to understand it, how we arrived at this is probably, we kind of have to look at how we got here in the first place. So what I'm sharing for the folks that are watching this on YouTube is a paper that came out, let's see, in October 2023, and it's called Reflection with an X, language agents with verbal reinforcement learning. And basically what this was when GPT-4 came out, we might have even talked about it. Like one of the sort of hidden features, it sort of leveled up to this ability to reflect upon itself. So
Mhm.
this paper goes into very specific detail. We'll have a link in the show notes here, of course. But really, from a really small, bite-sized version of this, one of my biggest pro tips when it comes to interacting with chatbots like ChatGPT or Claude or something is always ask it after you've given it a task. Like simply say, "Can you verify the results?" Or
Mhm.
did you do a good job at this task? And a lot of
Hmm.
times they'll just like give you a checklist, or if there's a problem with it, it'll go back and figure out what that problem is. That actually wasn't possible in GPT-3, and it really
Great.
wasn't consistent or a thing in GPT 3.5. When 4, and then of course 4.0
Mhm.
came out, reflection was actually a deliberate feature or interaction with the level of intelligence these
Right.
models have achieved. Have you probably done this before yourself,
And it can
right?
also go out and like fact check the web, right? So I actually I had an argument with ChatGPT earlier today about something that I was sure was true. It was about scooter models. I just bought a Piaggio scooter, um, and I was sure that one particular model only existed in a certain engine size, and I was wrong.
Mm.
It's like no, you're wrong. It's like this is the fact. I thought it was great.
Well, yeah, no, I love being wrong. Just ask my wife. No, which is not true. I actually played for her our last podcast where I admitted
Yeah.
that I was wrong about something because ChatGPT corrected me.
Mm.
So that has really helped my marriage. But I think this is an important technique. So it's not about not trusting the answer. It's just about like, it's kind of like just closing the loop, I guess, is a good way to think about this. Like,
Mhm.
hey, I asked you to do something. Did you do that thing?
Right, right, right.
And most of the time it just tells me, yeah, here's what you told me to do. And this is proof that I did it, and so on and so on. Or you can just be like, check to see if you did this correctly. And if you did it correctly, just say yes, right? And it'll come back and say that. Now
Yeah, yeah.
you can actually, so really what that reflection concept
Mhm.
allowed is some new techniques came out. So specifically, there were some techniques in prompting. And one of the ones that, and frankly, I use this all the time, and this is built into our intuition environment as well, too. I strongly recommend people look into this, is this idea of chain of thought prompting. Now, that's not exactly what we're talking about with O1, but I think this is important for people to understand to really get what's happening with O1. And on screen for the YouTube folks can see this, but for the folks that can't, Matt, you want to describe what's happening? We got the standard prompt on one side and the chain of thought on the other.
So these are great. These are like math questions. Like one of them. Roger has 5 tennis balls. He buys 2 more cans of tennis balls. Each can has 3. How many tennis balls does he have? So these are kind of questions that are sort of word patterns that a human frequently will get wrong because you look at something um, that you look. It's like 5
They're
plus
almost
2
like
is
a sleight
7,
of
or
hand or something. Like it's trying
it's
to make you
3.
think it's one answer, but then it's really something else,
Right.
basically. Yeah, and so there's really 2 different ways you can do this. You can just do the straight zero shot, which is what we see on the left, standard
Yeah.
prompting, just simply saying,
Yep.
here's the question. And then, so in this case, what they're doing is they're creating like an old school version of providing examples of the output
Yeah.
that they're looking for. So you see here, it gives a question, then it gives an answer, then it goes with the second question. The cafeteria has 23 apples. They use 20 to make lunch. The question doesn't
Right.
matter for the listeners, but then it gives an answer. But the point is the answer is wrong.
Right.
So on the
And
right
humans
hand
also get
side,
it wrong frequently,
and
but yes.
and honestly, that is so actually, I guess the question does matter. The cafeteria had 23
Mhm.
apples. If they used 20 to make lunch and bought 6 more, how many apples do they have? And I came up with 27 when I first read this, and that is the wrong answer. So
What's
this has
weird
to
and cool is that you get it wrong and ChatGPT gets it wrong for the same reason because you're looking for a
exactly.
pattern.
Right, but what is a better way for humans to do this and for us to train in our prompt
Yeah.
how to do this is to provide chain of thought. So the
Yep.
alternative approach to asking this question is you see on the right-hand side for those that are on YouTube here, we ask the
Mhm.
tennis ball question, and instead of saying just the answer is 11, so I'm sorry, the question of the tennis ball, the answer was 11.
Mhm.
But instead of just giving the answer as an example of how we want it to respond to us, we give the answer of Roger started with 5 balls. 2 cans of 3 tennis balls each is 6 tennis balls. So
Right.
5 plus
Plus
6 equals
6 is
11.
11.
So
Yeah.
therefore, the answer is 11. So we're literally putting those steps in
Yeah.
there and telling it how
Show
to
your
figure it
work.
out. Show your work. That's
Yeah.
literally what chain of thought is all about. And so then when we ask the same question about the 23 apples, now it's been prompted, hey, this is how you're supposed to approach this process, right? So this whole chain of thought prompting became very popular, and it should. And for those that are hearing this concept for the first time, you should absolutely go find everything you can about chain of thought prompting. As a matter of
Mhm.
fact, the link to the paper that we just shared a second ago is in the show notes. And so then what ended up happening, Matt, was the these new kind of approaches came about. We might have talked in the past about baby AGI and auto GPT. Did any of those sound familiar from our previous
It doesn't
conversations?
it doesn't ring a bell.
Well, the links are in the good links are going to be in the show notes, and when you log into your GitHub accounts, you'll be able to see both the baby AGI and auto GPT. What those are was that some developers out there said, hey, if language models can reflect upon themselves, why don't we use that to our advantage? And why don't we ask the language model to come up with the plan? And then
Mm.
it's essentially teaching itself a chain of thought
Right.
technique.
Hmm.
And so if we have the language models come up with the chain of thought instead of the humans doing it in the chain of thought prompting,
Hmm.
and then maybe if we give it some memory, like a database or something where it can
Yeah.
store in an intermediate variables or something like that within a
Hmm.
web application, then really kind of amazing things can happen. So if you research baby AGI or auto GPT, what you'll end up finding out is that these became revolutionary within the AI development space. Specifically, I'll show you this little example here. What we're looking at on screen are the different steps that are taken when a prompting is actually happening. We're essentially creating a loop. And what happens here is that you're saying, okay, I want you to, what was the thing that you were actually doing with the scooters? Let's use that as an example. You were saying
It's
what
pretty
different motor
technical.
size?
I don't know if
Okay.
that's really a good example, uh, but there's a medley model and a Liberty model, and they're available like in 125 and 150cc motors. And I was sure that they were the name Liberty and whatever are only available in one size and the other. That the name of the thing was actually what told you the CCs,
Oh, I see.
right?
Interesting.
So
So
so it had to actually do some web searching and cross-referencing.
that's the part. So those are
Yeah,
steps, right? So
yeah,
like go use your tools to perform some steps. So in this case,
right.
use your web searching tool, go search for this, that, and the other thing. And then maybe you have to do some math tools if you're actually comparing dimensions or, whatever, maybe not in the exact example that you gave, but the
Hmm.
idea is come up with the steps, have the language model figure out what the steps are, and then deploy those individual steps using some memory. Now,
Hmm.
what actually started to emerge at that point was the concept of agents, like actual agents. And there's a little bit of confusion with agents out there. I think
Yeah.
Copilot just announced agents. That's not what I'm talking about. Those are just GPTs that they put a super confusing name on. Agents are actually uh, tasks that language models come up with the steps of the task,
Hmm.
and then they use memory like databases, and they use tools like
Hmm.
searching and like Python for mathematics and calculations, and they come up with the results, and then they use reflection to determine whether or not they've completed the task.
Yep.
That's what an agent actually is. And so in this baby AGI and this auto GPT, they actually ended up coming up, essentially coming up with that concept, and then people just went bonkers.
Well, to take a
And
step back,
please,
AGI is general intelligence. That's like, human type stuff, not just, language models. Is that what they mean by
yeah,
baby AGI, like
yeah,
the level of a baby or something?
yeah, I think they were getting a little cheeky
Okay.
with that at the time, because the discovery was so profound and significant that they were saying it was AGI, but it's really
Yeah.
not. And
Yeah.
nor
Yeah. Yeah.
is OpenAI's O1 model,
Right.
which we're building up to here. But yes, that's what they're talking about with AGI. So if that helps you guys remember the repo to go find it, then it's the
Yeah.
baby version, right?
Yeah.
But and you can see my screen here.
Yeah.
Up on screen, you actually see this is like a tool that's using this process. You see how it says embarking on a new goal, plan the perfect date. And you see where it says thinking, Matt?
Hmm.
And then it said a task, plan a week-long vacation in Paris, book a flight. Let me actually go back. So for
Perfect
those
date, a
that
week
are,
in Paris. Damn, you live
yeah, that's
well.
actually, yeah, this is like an episode of The
I
Bachelor or
saw that
something.
movie.
so 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 the key of an agent is that you give it a task, and so the task here is plan the perfect date. Matt and I are planning the perfect date for each other. Now, notice the
Paris.
part here that says thinking. That is actually where an LLM is now tasked with coming up with what are the steps to figure out the perfect date in this
Hmm.
case, right? And so it goes out and it does a search and it comes back. And you see there's a little progress bar. And then when it comes back, it comes up with the following tasks. So, Matt, these tasks say plan a week long vacation of Paris. The
Right.
next task is book a flight and hotel reservation. And the final one is reserve a restaurant for a romantic dinner. Sounds great, right? So now then what these agents do is go deploy another string of agents, a whole nother plan with tools and such, and deploys those against the whole task. They
Hmm.
then come up with their results and they put all those results together. And the managing agent, sort of like the project manager agent, so to speak, compiles those all together and comes up with this description here or actions, like if some of the tools you're providing are APIs. So let me take a breath and say, does it make sense how like reflection and this concept of chain of thought prompting led us to agents, at least in the first place?
It does to me. Yeah, and I think we're even maybe oversimplifying a little bit because and you showed it a little bit in that one because of the type of tasks that it does. But what we actually get to in 1.0 is PhD level math. So 4 and 3.5 sucked at math, but now it's full-on PhD level math. It's going to help discover new things
But
in math that humans can't do, right?
but
That's where we are now.
all that's changed is the approach. There's not
Right.
more intelligence in there. All it did was in that
Yeah.
example that we showed with the apples thing, where you just kind of
Yeah.
ask it to answer a question and it's terrible math, instead of encouraging it to show its work and plan. That's literally all that
That's
changed.
crazy.
So it's very crazy, but I think the takeaway for people is that, hey, your prompts can be better too. Because remember, when people
Yeah.
complain about, getting bad stuff out of language models, it's
Mhm.
really their bad question
Yeah.
or lack of the
I
the
mean,
approach.
one of the things you
Uh,
could do is like, help me write a prompt to get this answer, and they'll actually help you with that. Uh,
no, you absolutely no.
yeah.
I mean, that's literally what agents are doing.
Mhm.
It's creating a prompt to a language model to come up
Right.
with the right approach, right? So,
If you're a web designer, here are four.
oh, that's not what we wanted. But so other products have come out of this whole thing, and these
Mhm.
products are profound, Matt. So, we briefly talked about one. Let me just share with you. You'll probably recognize this. I'm not going to play the audio, but I just want you to see what this was. This was something that was called Devon. Do you remember the whole Devon thing? I guess not to be confused with anything in the FileMaker space, but Devon, this is the one where it went on to Upwork and it read the description and then it went and created
Oh
the
yeah,
app that the description. Remember this whole
I
thing?
do remember that.
These are agents. And if you've ever used Devon, you can actually see these agents at work. And you can actually see the steps and it kind of interacts with you a little bit and it's building code on the outside. So this whole concept is really important. I will say that since we've done a pod last time, and people should really check this out, is that we have yeah, there we go. Sorry. There's a new thing also that's called Cursor. Have you heard of Cursor? This is just another agent. It's sort of like a evolution of the Devon thing. It's specifically for code, and you can go download it for free. But it's this
Hmm.
kind of like next level Copilot thing that everybody's going bonkers about. And so, and it's got a bunch of seed round funding, and it's very, very popular. But from a code standpoint, this allows you to actually plan out your coding process. So
That's
this evolution,
codementor.io. Is that what that is?
yeah, sorry, let me figure out. It's actually cursor.com.
Oh,
And
cursor.com.
then yeah. And so, you talk about math and why this is, why this works in the first place. I'm going to show you a little peek behind the curtain into our intuition environment. So that's something that we use as sort of a starting point, like a platform that has all sorts of these layers to it here at iSolutions. And this one little part here that I'm showing you, Matt, is one of the things that we do is we have the environment load all of the data. We do this little twinning process where you might have a FileMaker database, for example,
Mhm.
but we have a twin of your FileMaker database that lives over in this other like SQL-based like tool or
Mhm.
environment that has access to all these tools. It's a security thing and then also mostly a performance thing because with all due respect to FileMaker, it's not super performant on these high-level tasks. But what we have to do is we have to interpret what the user's request is, like go create a report and give me some insights based on blah, 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 blah. And it has to do something with the data. And so if you notice over here, Matt, for those that are watching on YouTube, you can see there's just some steps. Load the data set,
Mhm.
convert the date column to this, verify that the data set is not empty, do this, that, not. We did not come up with those tasks. We're using this agent approach and reflection and memory and the LLMs to help us write the right Python code on the fly, giving it access to all these different libraries. But it has to first start with what are all the things that need to be accomplished. And when it figures all that stuff out, it goes and then finds the right tools and the right data and follows all our instruction to put that all together. And that is why this approach is better at math too, because it's saying what would be the most optimal way to do this? What tools do I need? In what order do I need to do this? What dependencies are there?
Right.
And then deploy those things, right?
Yeah.
So that is the show your work on steroids, basically, right? So
Yep.
I'm thinking
And
you've
it's not
probably
much better for the generative text thing. It doesn't write any emails any better. But at
no.
complex tasks, writing code, checking code, math problems, And actually,
Yeah,
a
I
lot
would
of the
argue.
things we do ask it to do, probably report generation and getting facts from something, is it's what it's much better at. And
Yeah,
when it first
great
shipped,
point.
it didn't have the API, and now it does. So you can actually make an API call with O1.
Yeah, so this all leads up to OpenAI's O1. So for those of you that are not familiar with this, but you have ChatGPT Plus, you can go into ChatGPT Plus and check it out. You just have to pick the right model. It would be the O1 Preview or the O1 Mini preview model, and just simply ask it to do stuff. And one of the things that you're going to notice is that it comes up and it says, I'm thinking. And then what it does is it comes up with a series of different tasks that it needs to do to figure this whole thing out. It tells you how long it took. So that's the first thing, is they're being
Yeah.
somewhat apologetic that this takes a while. But you and I have talked about system one versus system two thinking a bunch of times before. And the main difference between that is take your time and just go through all the steps that you need to. That's the
Yep.
system two approach, rather than system one is use heuristics and your immediate memory
Yeah.
and just come up with what you think the answer is. All that we have known up until GPT and up until OpenAI's O1 model has been system one. And you and I have talked about it on previous podcast episodes that what the future is system two thinking with tools and memory and models that can reason and all these steps. So this is the first way that we're seeing at the tool level.
It
So
must just take a huge amount of compute power.
well, yeah, that's OpenAI's problem. But not only does it take a huge amount of compute power, but it also takes a huge amount of tokens. And I think a lot of people are talking about this as sort of a downside to using this if you're in ChatGPT. First of all, you're fully rate limited in the ChatGPT Plus tool because of the compute power that you're talking
Yeah.
about. But also all those little steps are burning tokens, and you're essentially creating all these little offshoot conversations that are going out and doing things, and you're paying the token cost. So I think unless you really need this functionality and you're not already doing it, and I'll explain what that means in a second, then you probably aren't going to need to pay the extra tokens. So I did a video that is going to be in the show notes. That it was I used to do these like when all the models kept coming out all the time, and I frankly had more time on my hands. I do these 10 tests. So like every time I don't know if you can see this one. I'm not going to play it or anything, but I just want to get to this last little part where I'm basically doing a side by side where I did these logic puzzles. I had these 10 logic puzzles, and I asked on the left-hand side of the screen ChatGPT 4.0 to figure out the logic puzzle, and it was mostly accurate in its what it came up with for answers. But then I also asked on the right hand side the O1 preview, and the difference in the O1 preview is that it showed its work and it actually shows you all the different steps that it takes. And so I think it's just really fascinating. If you want to write your own prompting so that you don't have to use this tool, you can actually go in and see what the what it came up with, like what its actual steps were. And then maybe that's a good way for you to actually learn how you might be able to create your own
Yep.
prompting tools, actually.
Yeah.
So
So like just watching what it does is education, right?
totally.
Yeah.
That's what my thought process is. So what a lot of people are talking about is that OpenAI O1 is introducing reasoning. And what I'm trying to explain here today is that its technique for reasoning is really just this chain of thought concept. And so the takeaway for all this is, hey, it's cool and you should check it out, but use it sparingly because you are rate limited. And if you're using the API, for example, it's going to cost you a ton more than you think.
Yeah. Four
But
times as much or something.
well, I mean, not only is the per token cost higher, but the amount of tokens to
Oh,
accomplish the same task will be much higher. So you really got
yeah.
to use the right weapon for the right job. But for some tasks, this is the only way you can do it. Now, whenever every time a model comes out, we evaluate the model in our intuition environment. And like, for example, when GPT 4.0 came out, within 45 minutes, we pushed it out and all our clients had access to that model.
Right.
We did the same thing when O1 came out, and we did not push it out. to our intuition environment. And the reason for that is because what I just showed you earlier, we are already doing the chain of thought. We are already doing the offshoots. We already have agents in the background that are doing this. We already have all the tools and the memory built into it. So it would be redundant. We would literally be saying, we've already done this work, so now you go do the same work, basically, right? So it's really just an example of, it's awesome, it's amazing, but maybe you don't even need it. Like if you're already doing chain of thought, you're already using memory, you're already using reflection and tools, you might not even need it. But if you don't, and all those things and everything I just talked about for the last 15 minutes just sounds like blah, 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 then good news, you've got a model that introduces reasoning. And so this is why what you're identifying is how they're pitching this as, for STEM, like science and engineering and math, why this is such a big deal. Because the reality of it is, success at math is showing your work, not memorizing formulas and what their answer would be, right? So this is really just giving it a new thinking process. And that's kind of what we're showing here on screen. And some call that reasoning. So your thoughts on whether you really think this is reasoning as the philosopher of the pod?
I mean, this is the same process that a human would use for reasoning. And
that's what
it's a little bit like what the graph that you're showing here, where the input kind of keeps getting bigger at every channel, which is something that I don't know if that's actually the way that it works in the human brain, but maybe it does. Maybe just kind of on a different level, right? Like you learn math in grade school, so your input is that level of math, and then all of that, so you learn high school math, and then now your input is bigger, and then you go to college math, and now your input's even bigger. That's kind of like what you're showing, if that's a fair comparison.
No, it absolutely is. And I think, Matt, what we're going to do right now is just a quick little 1-minute demo. I don't know if people are aware of the fact, and I want to encourage people to do this, including you, my friend. You can actually go do this yourself. So if you have a OpenAI subscription, you can go in and use this tool, which is the get rid of that. It's the playground, and the playground has an option where you can actually compare. So you'll notice over here that I got GPT 4.0 on the left side, and I got 01 preview. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to ask it a logic puzzle. Okay, so I'm going to put it into the system instructions over here. This is just the deities on the mountaintop. You meet 3 deities. One always tells the truth, one always lies, and one only tells the truth or lies randomly. We can call them truth, false, and random. They understand English, but answer only in their own language, with either yeppers for yes or nope for no. But you don't know which is which. You can ask 3 questions to any of these deities, and you can ask the same deity more than one question, and then they will answer with yeppers or nope. What 3 questions will you ask to figure that out? So so if we go ahead and then if we just put that in as our actually, so
I've seen some.
Do you know
stuff
the
like
answer?
This. It's kind of like if I asked the other 2 deities, whether the Earth is round, what would they say? So then,
well, and that's kind of the idea, right? So so I now notice on the left hand side it already gave me an answer. What's happening on the right hand side for those that are just listening, Matt? It's still thinking, right? So 01 preview is still thinking while GPT 4.0 gave the answer. So it goes through and it says, well, here's the first question you ask. If I were to ask, are you the truth? Would you say yeppers? So on and so on. So you see, it came back with this system 1 approach on the left-hand side, gave an explanation. So there's the 3 questions right there. And then on the right-hand side, it's still thinking, right? So that's the big thing. So you can see how much more time this takes. And by the way, I think you see the latency is like 11,000 milliseconds at 684 tokens. So that's probably going to be something that's useful for us to look at as well too. So first of all, think about if you're integrating, okay, now it stopped. So the difference was 11,000 milliseconds versus 50,000 milliseconds.
So 11 seconds to 50 seconds.
And 684 tokens to almost 5,000 tokens. Okay. So not only is even if the per token prices were exactly the same, this would be a meaningful. So in the first questions, to any God, let's see. So God, are you random? And then the interpretation. So it actually, I mean, the answer is pretty significant too. So really what I wanted to show you more so than the answers was how much time one took and what the different token cost was and how you can go play with these yourself. Now, if you want to check out,
I want to know if they both got it right or if only O1 got it right.
Yeah, there is. Well, I can tell you that in my video that'll be in the show notes here, that I went through 10 of these, and I it's like a 20-30 minute long video if you want to check it out, and I talk about the answers and we compare each one of the answers too, if you want to, if you guys want to check that out. So I would say have fun with it. In the YouTube video, I even include the 10 questions with the correct logic answer. So you can actually play with them in the playground yourself if you'd like to. So, and then see if they even come up with the same thing. So, but the main point of the takeaway here is the approach that's being taken.
Yeah.
And when you're actually doing this inside ChatGPT and you pick one of the O1 models, it does the thinking. But then when it's done, you can hit the little drop down button and expand it out and see all the different steps that it came up with. And that's what we were talking about earlier, is probably a great tool to use to kind of figure out how all this stuff works and do your own chain of thought
Yeah.
prompting, right?
I guess one thing I would throw out there, if you're doing, if you have something in FileMaker that uses this approach and the user doesn't really think about which model it's using, they're going to think it's broken if it takes 50 seconds to do something. So you have to sort of think about that too.
Sure. Well, let's explore that concept there. So first of all, you said user, and the user interface expectation is not going to account for legacy. They're not going to have the patience for legacy or
Right.
latency. I'm sorry, like you're
Yeah.
talking about. Like no one's going to want to do that. So then, really, this is meant for tasks that just sort of happen on their own schedule,
Right.
or they go and do all these things and present it to the user when they're done. So already it's a fundamental
Side.
change in the way you're thinking about these things and approaching these, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first part. So think of this more as like, if we were to bring it down to FileMaker level, think of this more as a FileMaker script that a user is running in front of them versus one that you would rather choose to do as PSOS or something instead,
Or just a
right?
scheduled script. Yeah.
A scheduled script.
Mhm.
And I think the PSOS one might also introduce the fact that you're giving it more memory, and the
Right.
user doesn't actually have to have a session in order for those things to run, and that's where
Yep.
the scheduled one comes into play too. So I
Yeah.
think that's probably how you should look at these things, as far as how to implement these into your process. Also, agents, it's basically reasoning and these whole agent concepts. Agents are going to take forever. And you hear a lot of people talk about agents right now, and the kind of things they're saying is like, within a couple of years, I mean, there's tons of these out right now, but within a couple of years, the user expectation is going to be different. It's not going to be, I hit a button and my answer comes back. It's going to be, hey, you know that every Monday I need to do this thing. So go do the thing before I'm going to be logging into this system, and
Right.
just tell me what you found out. And I don't care if it takes 3 days
Right.
to do this, right?
If
So
it's in advance. Yeah.
I think that's kind of fascinating, which, you know, is kind of sort of like the conversation that we had on our last podcast episode, where we were talking about UI and UX. And if folks have not seen that
Mhm.
episode, I suggest that you do. It was a great one. We got some really good feedback from a bunch of our friends on that. So if you haven't seen it, please check it out. But Matt, I have a couple quick thoughts on our discussion from last time around. First of all,
Yeah. Yeah.
you enjoyed that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Talking with our friends Matt and
Well, I mean,
Alexis.
how can you not enjoy talking with Alexis and Matt? Because they're both awesome.
They're brilliant.
Alexis is on this crazy world tour right now. She's taking pictures of awesome things from wherever she is in the world. It's pretty cool.
I think you'll probably run into her at a couple of the
Well, I know
conferences
she's
that you
going to
just
Rome and I
mentioned.
won't be there, but I'll see her in Malmö, hopefully.
Oh, and by the way, to clear up any confusion, I guess I'm on the speaker list for Rome. I'm sending my bot in
Oh,
my stead. So I will not actually be there in person. Just a AI facsimile of me will be there. So please to enjoy, and make sure to buy him drinks.
we'll get to
Or
those AI facsimiles a little later, won't we? Another little
yeah.
preview.
So first of all, a quick update. Gen AI first UX. So long, point and click, how generative AI will redefine the user interface. This link is going to be in the show notes. I just wanted people to, and this I think is a good sort of, follow up to the discussion that we had when we were chatting. But one of the big things that we talked about in our last presentation was, well, first of all, if anybody follows me on on what is it called? LinkedIn. Yes, that one. You've probably seen me talk about the the artifacts from hold on, let me just share this screen so you
Yeah,
can see.
artifacts. That was on our list to talk about today too.
Yeah, so we did talk about artifacts on our last podcast, right? Where we were saying that this is sort of a new paradigm for UI. That's the Claude AI thing, actually, if you remember that.
I do.
Let's just see here. And for those that excuse me, did not see our last episodes. First of all, do you have Claude AI as well? I'm curious if you've been playing around.
I do. I
you
haven't
were
been playing with that
around
much
it.
though. And now it has like a huge, much larger token window too. Yeah, no, I haven't spent as much time with it as I should have, Chris.
Okay, no problem but just a quick 30-second update because that'll frame up what we're looking at here is
Write me a web page.
yeah, so on the left-hand side, those that saw the episode probably recognize this now. On the left-hand side, we have the chat where we're interacting with the chat. And this is important because this is a different style of chatting with the language model. This isn't the question-answer machine thing that most of the world thinks we're supposed to do with this.
Yeah.
What we're actually doing is saying, write me a web page. And then on the left-hand side, it's actually writing code, but it's got this like preview page. And so this is actually the page that it's writing. And we went into some discussion in our last episode about whether this is production ready or if it even needs to be and all that kind of stuff. But the idea is, as a coding partner, you can then go in and say, I like red, white, and blue. You can just give it, new updates. And then what it does is it goes and changes the code. You see the code being written. And then when it's done with the code, it shows us the thing that we're writing. So for me, your thoughts, first of all, I know we talked about this.
So this is a really visual version of something that I do use ChatGPT for all the time, which is to create like if you're thinking about something, to create a table, and you can say things like, delete that column, add another column for miles per gallon, go out on the internet and find other ones. I use this for a lot for scooter comparison. Go find any other models that are available in Greece that are within that same price range. Compare and contrast which is better for a tall person, add a column for seat height. You can totally sculpt a spreadsheet over a long conversation. This is even sculpting better. A web page, or God, I wish it would do it for FileMaker layouts, FileMaker scripts.
And thank you for giving a much better crafting a spreadsheet example, because I'm using this web thing again only because we showed it on the last episode. But I've never used it for creating a web page either. I do it the exact same way you're talking about. I say, give me this data set, or I upload something and I go extract just this data from it. Same kind of thing as you do. Add another column, do this, do that. Okay, now give me a visualization of all this, and then write some, synopsis of what we're looking at or something. The whole point, to kind of step back away from the process, the whole point of the visual here is that we've got instruction and conversation on the left, and this sort of somewhat ephemeral UI on the right. Like whatever it is we're doing, if you're writing code and you want to preview it, then show the preview. If you're creating a table, if you want to write a report, the whole point is it keeps showing. You notice on the bottom, it shows version 2 of 2 and all that kind of thing.
So I think in this version, you probably cannot drag and drop visual elements around. Have that. So I think that's where we're going though, right? It's going to get there. We can say, this is great, but I want to put this over there. I want to make this the other size. I saw an ad on one of the other pages you were looking at for Wix Studio. I use Wix for my webpage. Wix Studio actually has some of those AI features.
No doubt.
It doesn't have the both direction stuff yet, but it has quite a bit to automatically generate things like you're showing here.
Well, essentially, everything where you're building stuff, that includes FileMaker, should have this sort of, let's call it, I mean, I know if I listen back to this or somebody listens back to us a year from now, it'll seem dated what I'm about to say, but left-hand side of the screen is where you're interacting and coding and having a conversation, and the right-hand side of the screen is the thing you're seeing that you're actually interacting with. We would call it layouts in FileMaker on the right, and the thing that the user wants, they're having a conversational experience rather than a UI clicking through a whole navigation tree to go through various different layouts. It's creating the layout that user wants at that moment in time, and then it disappears. You could recall it if you want, but that's the whole ephemeral part of it.
Right.
And just to show you that this is becoming even more of a thing, you can see this page too, right? Or did I just share the Claude?
I just see Claude.
Okay, great. So then just a week or so ago, Microsoft announced something called Copilot Pages. And they also said for multiplayer collaboration. So basically they did the exact, I'll mute this, but they did the exact same thing, Matt. It's code on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side is the thing that you're seeing. But what they added was multiplayer, which means that you and I could be looking at the same spreadsheet at the same time and adding our own data. And because they're Microsoft, they are adding another layer where you can integrate with like SharePoint or something like that.
Right. That's cool.
Or,
I'm sure Google will be right there with this too, right? I use Google Docs and Google Sheets with other people all the time, and you can see where people's cursor is. It's cool.
Yeah, it's that. So there's the share thing. It's that, but with access to all the tools.
All the other tools,
Google has one, the Google Suite, in this case, the Microsoft Suite. But the point is, more traction on this, interact with it on the left, and the thing that you're looking at and now sharing on the right. So the thing that you and I were just speculating on, even just a month ago, was that this might be the direction that user interfaces for data and applications may be going. And now we're seeing validation from some of the biggest players in the space. So I don't know, Matt.
This video is cool.
what could possibly be
there
the
you go,
impact
drag and drop.
of this? Yeah, there's your drag and dropping right there. So what are your thoughts on the impact this has for our listeners who are custom application developers for business?
Huge.
I think this is profound and extremely important. I don't know what it means within our stack. We obviously can't do anything like this in FileMaker. We can do it in the web.
Well, no, but if we can use something like Figma or something like that, right? To come up, if we have a client meeting and we're using a tool like this, you can get a really quick proof of concept and understand what you're going to be building for them, and then go build it in FileMaker. So now, obviously, this can't write the FileMaker code and all this, perfectly to do all that. It can do some of it.
That's probably the right answer for this conversation.
What were you looking for?
Well, no, that's the right answer. I'm saying, I think the real answer is that's the app, not the prototype for the app.
Yes.
I think the important takeaway is this could be where things are going.
Yeah. So there's traction behind that.
A tremendous amount of traction. It is completely enveloping all developers. And if you combine that together with the things that we talked about before, agency, writing code in the background, memory and reflection, and these new types of reasoning models, and then you combine that together with the user experience and connecting to the data sources and the apps on the back end, this fundamentally changes the user experience forever and permanently.
Yep.
And it's not just AI, like, question answer machine. It's all these tools working in conjunction with each other. All Google is going to do when they come up their offering, and all Microsoft has done, is just take all their apps and feed it into this whole paradigm, but they're still using the user interacts with something and the things they want ephemerally appear on screen. That is what applications are going to be, and arguably already are. That's what I'm saying, I guess, here. So as a reward for those that have stuck out to this point of the podcast,
candy now.
Terror, just plain terror for you. But I feel strongly about this, and I know that these are conversations that are happening at Claris as well too. So
terror, Matt, what do you mean terror? This is purely exciting to me.
Yeah, but okay, well, I'm just gonna say it. We make a living. I bought this house, you bought that house, off of doing what? Charging people hundreds of hours to do something that shouldn't take hundreds of hours to do. If they can just get the thing that they want to do.
Another way.
All right.
Okay. You and I have made our living by using a tool that's much simpler and faster than other ways to do the same thing to deliver for a certain client base. You and I are going to be able to use a different set of tools to do the exact same thing.
This is a great conversation.
To be able to build things better and faster for people that we can do now. So we'll be able to do cooler things, new things that we couldn't do before.
Yep. So let's do the math on that.
But all the time we've been doing what we've been doing, the customers that we have been able to do it as well, just at a lower level because they haven't put in the hours to understand the tools.
Okay, yeah. You first of all, you just said hours. Okay, so let's do the math on this.
Okay.
So I totally agree with you. That's exactly what we've been doing. So let's say that these tools allow us to do it 10 times faster. Let's just use that as simple math. So that means that let's just say you have a business and you build 1,000 hours a year. I don't want to get too many zeros on this or I'll lose the math. You have built 1,000 hours a year and that's how you make your living and everything is great. Now your tools allow you to produce the same thing in 10% of that. So now you're doing the same output and you're only billing 100 hours a year for that. And we could get into a whole value bill conversation, but I think value bill, the air comes out of the balloon on that just as much because of what you just said. Our customers are aware of these tools and these efficiencies already. Okay. So now we go back to our 10%. So that's all great. If we can go back, become salespeople and go increase our sales channel 9x.
But your math is wrong.
No, it's not, Matt.
It is because we've billed 1,000 hours a year or whatever.
Yeah, and now you're billing 100.
No, we're not. We're still billing 1,000, but we're doing more stuff with it.
No, I know you're not listening to this part of the math. I'm agreeing with that. The point is, in order to get to the build more stuff, you now got to put your sales guy hat on and go find 9 times more work than you had before. And what I'm trying to say is, Matt, explain yourself because you make no sense.
When I set aside work to do 4 hours for a particular customer, I can do as much as I can to get a really, really cool product for them or whatever I'm specifically trying to do.
They've asked you to do a thing. They're not asking you to show off and do your.
No, they're asking me to solve a specific problem.
Yes. So you solve that specific problem.
The customer, like 2 years ago, the customer would say, "Hey, I need a sales system so that I can find a prospect that's a good prospect for this particular thing." Yeah. So that I can write an email to them and say, "Hey, we've got a new piece of inventory."
Whatever it is, the task is not relevant. The fact is that 2 years ago, it took you how many? 2 years ago, it took you how many hours to do that, and how long does it take you to do now?
That's not what I'm trying to say. It's not what I'm trying to say. 2 years ago, I would have spent 4 hours to do it, and I would only have been able to do so much because the tools could only do what they could do. Now, when they say to do that, I'll spend 4 hours. And I'll make the same layouts and stuff that I did, but now I'm going to do a generative AI call, and I'm actually going to spend more time, right? Because I'm going to write some custom DJSON to collect all the information about the customer into one block that I can then send to generative AI and say, this is a summary of this customer. And then another generative AI call that says, this is information about this particular product. Marry those up and give me a really tailored email for this customer and why they want this product. I could not do that. There was no way to do that before 2 years ago.
So you're saying two things that are important to our conversation. The task that you're being asked to do and the deliverable have changed in 2 years because of the capabilities have changed. I'm suggesting that thing you just described, you'll be able to do way more in considerably less time, is what I'm trying to say.
But the customer that's still only one part of the thing that they want me to build.
Okay.
I couldn't do more. Now the next thing they're saying is, yes, now I need a way to do export of images to the web. Now I need another way to do, all the other things that they still need the application to do.
Yes.
Still take those hours to do it. It's just, I couldn't do as much as I could. And, so the math, math that I would use is this, because I go back.
Well, I just want to summarize what you're saying that you're saying that because you can do more in 1,000 hours in a year, your customers are getting more, basically, right? So
they always have been. Every year, as I have become a better developer and as FileMaker has become a better platform, I have been able to do more for customers in the same amount of time. Every year.
I know, but
Matt, just let me. 66 years.
Okay, stop talking for 2 seconds.
Not that long.
But dude, that assumes your customers keep asking you to do things. I'm just trying to get out this one very important point, my friend, is that we would need a market that is expanding, demand that continues to expand, customers that keep coming to us for stuff endlessly without us ever having to do any lead gen or demand gen or anything. And guess what? Our market is not expanding.
I'm a person of faith.
Okay, keep your faith. I'm just saying our market is not expanding. It's contracting rapidly. And the expansion, the market for the tools that we're showing people here today is expanding rapidly, but the expectation for those users is that should not take 100 hours to do something. As a matter of fact, a lot of these low-hanging fruit,
you don't have enough variables. Your equation's lacking variables. The number one problem every single Claris partner is telling me they have right now is finding developers to hire that can do the work to fill what their clients are asking them to do.
I'm sure.
That's a variable that kind of disproves what you're talking about.
No.
Now, who knows what it's going to be like 2 years from now? I don't know.
I'm talking about the future, Matt. It's adorable. Okay. It's cute that everybody has demand. I do too. I run on business as well too. I'm not retired. Right. I have these same problems. We literally just had these conversations yesterday. Right. On the AI side, guess what, Matt? On the AI side, I have the same 5 people on my A team. And we have been able to increase, we literally did a study, I did it in my presentation at Engage, 5x manpower or person power, or whatever we call it. That means that I'm able to do 5.5 times, actually 5.5x. I'm able to do 5.5 times more output with the same people, meaning I'm accomplishing way more things that customers want and making way more money without having to add headcount. The reason that we can't do that in FileMaker is because we don't have the tools, dude. FileMaker's not building these. All right, you can wait around.
Oh, I'm not gonna. That's not what I'm saying.
Everybody can go sit over there and wait for
FileMaker only has the tools that it has, but FileMaker can connect to all the other things. That's where it's been going, right? We can build a JavaScript thing. We can have a JavaScript and stick it in a web viewer or whatever. And so all of the complexity for that,
or just build it in the web,
or you can build it in the web, right? But customers have been able to do that this whole time. But it's been more complex and difficult, so they haven't. So there still has been a place for FileMaker this whole time. Whether it's going to continue to increase as it has continued to increase year over year, including last year, okay, well,
no, it has not at all. But anyways, I'm not going to sit here on a podcast and freak everybody out.
Then why are all my partner friends trying to hire more employees to do FileMaker development?
You're absolutely right. The universe is expanding. The demand is there. We cannot get enough people. All we need to do is get this into universities and teach people FileMaker, and we're going to take over the world. I totally agree with you.
No, I don't think that's the case. I don't think.
Totally agree with you.
No, you don't.
Yeah, everybody's fine.
That's not my point. I don't think that's where the FileMaker market is. I don't think that's ever going to happen with the whole university thing.
No, that was just me being silly. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
No, you know what? You're absolutely right, Matt. You've convinced me. I think all the partners in the Claris space should stay the course and double down, triple down on FileMaker. Don't just forget all these silly fads, like crypto and, NFTs and stuff like that. Like, ignore all that stuff and keep doing what you're doing, because there's not enough room on the arc for everybody anyway. So how about some candy, actually, Matt? You sent me something really interesting last night. Okay. For the ears.
This is one of the most heated, cool discussions we've ever had.
I know, I love it. Yeah. I love it. I got about 25 people in my head right now that I can't wait to hear their thoughts on this whole discussion. So hell yeah. But so anyways, fun times. We've got something really cool. I want to tell you about a podcast in the FileMaker space that I heard about. Talk about like expanding. So before that, though, you've got something for people's ears that I really can't wait for you to share. I think it's so clever.
All right, FileMaker fans.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hey, I don't know what that was, but okay. So maybe I'll do it and then talk about what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Hello everyone, this is Matt Navarre 2.0, multilingual, for example, Greek. Yes, all well and good, but what about Cantonese? Let's try Italian. Il cibo in Italia è ok, ma il caffè mi ha mandato in paradiso. Okay, let's move on. How about French? Quand vous visitez Paris, n'essayez même pas de parler français, s'il vous plaît, mais passez un bon séjour. And finally, Ukrainian. Привіт вам трьом, хто мене розуміє, я підтримую вас.
So you've been busy.
I've been busy. I've been spending some time with Duolingo.
Since our last pod, you've been like just crushing learning new languages. Hey, buddy, I am impressed. I've always thought you were one of the smartest people I've ever met. And you just proved that you're even smarter than I think. How in the world did you learn that many languages that quickly?
Yeah, I didn't.
Oh, come on, man.
So what that was a website service, probably something you told me about a while ago, as a website service called naturalreaders.com.
Oh,
and
yeah.
which
familiar with
by
that.
default, you can have it read, you can just give it text and it will read it to you as a book and you can save it as audio. But it has a feature where you can sample your voice. So I made a half an hour recording of my voice. Some of them say they want 5 hours of audio of your voice. And then it captured all of my pitch and speech and everything about that. And then I just put text in. So the thing that I just played took me about 10 minutes to make earlier today.
Really?
Yeah, I went into ChatGPT and I said, hey, I've got a thing I wanted to do. Let's pick some languages and write a simple sentence. And by the way, the things I said in each of those languages may be entertaining to people on the podcast who can listen to them.
Oh no, are we gonna get like flagged?
I don't
for
think so.
anything that was in
There's
there?
nothing like that, but
Well, so, first of all, that's amazing. And then I think when it comes to tools like that, like when you and I are educators in this space, right? And one of the big things has been localization. As a matter of fact, FileMaker Rome, I really just submitted a video presentation, and they spent a bunch of time translating it into the different languages for the attendees for FileMaker Rome. I suggested that a tool like this would make that process a lot easier. As a matter of fact, like arguably every content, like LinkedIn Learning probably is doing that since they're Microsoft, but like localization used to be a big deal. As a matter of fact, like many, many moons ago when I did my FileMaker essential training, Claris or Linda or whatever wanted to see it in Japan or some other geo that I didn't speak the language. And so I had to meet with somebody, go over my script. Like they had to translate it into whatever language it was and then explain a bunch of stuff to me. The whole point is you could have just run it through that thing and done dubbing on it and then be able to deploy in a bunch of different languages. Arguably, we could do this podcast in that same manner,
yes,
frankly, right? And open up our reach. I think that's amazing. I'm so impressed that you learned all those languages because
and by the way, in the interface, I could maybe show it.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I will. Okay, in the interface to do that, every little bit of the speech, you can choose the language and the voice that it goes in, and the
how
speed.
you did that.
Right? So like this can be 1x speed, and then when I'm speaking in this one here, let's see if it plays.
5分钟内任何人都
Can you hear it?
Sweet. Yep.
Okay, so
5分钟内任何人都可以学会说广东话。
so if that's too fast,
What'd you call
I
me?
can make the speed much slower.
Oh, wow.
And so like if I'm trying to learn a language, I can use this to like listen.
5分钟内任何人都可以学会说广东话。
Right? Much slower.
Beautiful.
And then, so in other words, I can actually have your voice and my voice. And so I could pick like a different voice in here if I have, you and me, and then each paragraph can be a different person. So you could build a whole audiobook in whatever number of languages this thing speaks, paragraph by paragraph, speed by speed. It even gives you the ability to like change emphasis, but only in the voices that it includes. It includes a ton of voices when it comes with it. By the way, this is $100 a month at the level that I'm at right now.
and just to let you know, like the thing you were thinking, maybe I showed you, there was 11 Labs as a tool that I use for custom AI
so that's
voices.
a direct competitor.
Yep. Now 11 Labs has a dubbing tool, and I can tell you that, and I've played with it before. It doesn't have that. It doesn't let you go in line by line because like you listen to your 5-minute video and it's dubbed and it's fine, but you go, well, I would rather change this, or the speed on this isn't matching the click or whatever. So that level of control, I think, is better, frankly. So, these are, we talk about like deep fakes, like you literally just showed a deep fake basically, and they're terrible. It's all bad and no one should represent people the wrong way, but there are actual reasons why these types of technologies can be useful, and you just demonstrated one of those.
Yeah, that it's pretty much indistinguishable from me,
Agreed.
I spoke without a lot of inflection and stuff like that. And then what I love is it doesn't make mistakes, right? So if I'm reading something really long, it just doesn't make mistakes. And that's because, in other words, if you try to read an audiobook, you're gonna have to do a lot of editing and a lot of redoing. But this one I can just throw text at it and say, okay, here's a book, do it.
Well, I was telling some people at Engage that I did the micro certification course for Claris Connect. And
Hmm.
it's like 32 videos on the three different, I think 36 videos for the three different courses.
Yeah.
And if you haven't done it yet, when you go do it, you should be aware that 5 of those are my fake voice.
Oh,
And I did it for reasons like you're probably hearing right now. I'm getting a little hoarse. I don't have the
yeah.
stamina voice wise that I used to when I record.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
to fill in the blanks, it was me. And I would challenge anybody that hasn't done that micro certification yet to go through there and try to figure out if they can tell when that was
Yeah.
me or not.
I do all the micro certifications, but I just go right to the test.
Well,
I've watched some
if
of
you,
the videos. The,
yeah, if
the,
you,
the top level Claris Connect one, you'd have to watch the videos unless you use Connect a lot.
Yeah, because
Um,
that's the one where what was it again? Oh, the creating the custom connectors, right?
yep.
Like there are some like things you got to follow. All right, so my ear candy at the end of the show is look, we do a podcast in the ever expanding universe of FileMaker opportunities, and I just wanted to give a shout out to a new podcast in the FileMaker world. We don't usually plug podcasts without having the host on, like we were actually
Mhm.
plugging Matt and Alexis's podcast. But
Right.
this one I
Uh-huh.
think is really compelling. There's an episode. I'll just do a quick little snippet of this episode on working with language models in FileMaker 2024. See what you think.
All right, FileMaker fans, buckle up because we're diving into the future. FileMaker 2024 is here, and it's brought some seriously cool tech along for the ride.
It's a game changer.
No, seriously, AI and machine learning are officially in FileMaker. We're talking about teaching your database to think, well, kind of like you do, understanding what you mean, not just the words you type.
Yeah, it's a whole new level of database intelligence.
We're going to break it all down today. And we're going straight to the source, the Claris Engineering blog, their July 2024 post to be exact.
All right, what do you think?
That's
You're
crazy.
the sultry tones audio on this podcast. So what do you think of what you just heard there? That is a new tool for those of you that have maybe not heard about this yet, but it's called Notebook LM from Google.
Mhm.
And it's basically a GPT. See these popping up all over the place. This is what applications are about now. You upload a bunch of your data sources, like a ChatGPT GPT would
Mhm.
be for those that are just listening. And in this case, all I did was I took a PDF of the Working with LLMs in FileMaker 2024 engineering blog, and I uploaded it. And of course, like anything else, it can do summaries and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. But this cool new feature, if you click on Notebook Guide, it allows you to generate on the fly a podcast recording. So you heard there, it was 2 different people interacting, laughing with each other, cracking jokes. You can even hear the microphone pop sometimes and
Yeah.
them taking breaths. It really is very listenable. This is sort of an extension of, I can't even remember what the app was anymore, but there's this thing where you could like feed a website to it and it would scrape it and then come up with something similar like this.
Mhm.
Now you can actually feed it the content. So we actually have clients that like we have a client that they do like a shift change. And so they had us build a solution that goes and gathers all the data from, this is what happened and this who did what and all the transactions that occurred. And then we feed it into a language model to create a script. And then it through an API generates an audio like this that they send out via email. So when the next shift is driving into work or they're just got their headphones in, they can listen to all this stuff and consume it in a different manner. It's similar to the NFL custom podcast demo that I've showed
Yeah. Yeah.
before, where it's just personalized. This could be personalized just for you, but it's all about like the listening being the new intake method instead of reading, for example. So I
Yeah.
thought that was a pretty cool thing. So that again is Notebook LM. We'll put the link to
That's
that
cool.
in the show notes here. So
One other little tidbit, listening instead of reading. I have been thinking all along that people learn in one way primarily. Like you either listen, you're either auditory or you're like visual or you're, that's actually been totally debunked. And so I
interesting.
found that out because I went into ChatGPT and I said, tell me 20 things that people believe that are proven to not be true, like losing
wow, cool.
your head. So, and it listed them. I'm like, whoa. So I learned stuff from that
Dude.
list. It was surprising
Well, by the way, what people don't know is we had to start and stop this recording like 4 times because I was trying to get the new ChatGPT. And by the way, this is not it's saying something bad about this tool. I was just doing it wrong. I didn't have any Wi-Fi in my recording booth is essentially what it boiled down to. But for those of you that have the ChatGPT app, I'm not so sure on desktop, but definitely on your phone or on your iPad, the new advanced voice mode has come out. And you can tell because there's a little like squiggly audio looking icon down in the bar where you type in the commands or the question. And when you click on it, if you have this new feature for ChatGPT Plus users, it'll pop up on screen and ask you if you want to enable it. I strongly recommend you enable it because you can now have conversations like you just had with this. Like you put in your ear pods and you go walk the dog and you just sit and talk about it. Now, of course, you could do that with voice input before, Matt, but you couldn't stop it, right? Like it would just go into these long-winded talks. And like, so my wife and I were actually thinking about like the economic conditions as they like, what do we want to see happen in the economy for the next 10 years before we retire based on where we're at with our investments and blah, 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 blah. So we drove all the way down from this wedding in LA, talking to the car essentially and being able to interrupt it so we weren't burning all this time listening to this long-winded thing and these bullet points that it loves to do. We just be like, no, we got that. We mean blah, blah, blah. And that little part of it is such a big improvement on this interaction. So much so that for the last couple of days, I've actually been just leaving my phone on it. You only get about an hour a day, because they rate limit you. But I've been sitting it on my phone during meetings, and I ask it before the meeting to fact check me if I'm saying anything that's technically incorrect or remind me of things that that were on my agenda for a list or something like that. So
useful for recent debates.
I strongly recommend that people check out that tool. If you get access to it, it is significantly different than what you know from before. So definitely check that out.
Phone on my app on my phone, and I don't see this. I just see the headphone thing, which is what I had before.
Right. So I have it on my phone and my iPad, but I don't have it on the desktop. So I don't really know what the desktop thing is, but I do know the thing I'm really waiting for is supposed to be part of this as well, too. On the desktop, you're supposed to be able to have a broadcast mode. So much like we've done on the podcast before, where you can upload a file or take a screenshot of an app that's on there, you can actually just allow it to just be open on your screen all day long and just go, hey, you know what? Be quiet until you see me doing something wrong with this code or whatever, and then chime in and tell me, what I should be doing. For one, I'm going to have that on my desktop just all day. If they let me, hammer away at that all day long, I'm going to have that open all day long. I'm going to ask questions to it.
Yeah.
I heard Sam Altman do an interview when he was testing this feature out in the early stages, and he was like, that's what I do. I just have it open. It's like my companion all day long.
So this is something I think we're going to maybe really see with Apple Intelligence, because I think a lot of people won't want this stuff to go out of what they're working on.
Agreed.
But with Apple Intelligence, where everything's happening on chip on your computer, and it doesn't have to do it can know a lot about you, so it doesn't have to be as smart as being able to run 1,000 computers at the same time.
Totally.
So that's absolutely quite interesting.
All that personal context is what you're talking about. That is really the most revolutionary part of Apple Intelligence. I can't wait.
Crazy other thought too. Imagine if Apple Intelligence could use all of the CPUs and all of the Apple devices,
like mesh all your compute,
mesh them together, and but only show me on the one that I'm on.
Oh,
that'd be cool.
Well, I mean, it has that feature that
because my watch is very smart.
Yeah, like what's the one where you can it starts with a C. You can throw something you're looking at on your phone to your desktop or something. Like it has that iCloud facilitates that whole thing. So I bet you it could do that. So maybe that's a topic for a future pod, Matt. I think
that would be cool.
Well, this is fun. I missed chatting with you, and luckily, people only listen to the first 2 minutes of the podcast anyway, so they won't catch. They'll just get our plugs. They won't catch any of the compelling debate.
That's all true, but Alexi Folger has a story where we said that in one of the podcasts, and she screamed out loud because she was there. She's like, I made it all the way through, right as she was driving into her driveway. So hi, Alexi. We love you.
Hi, Alexi. Exactly. And for the one other person that's still here, I guess bye, and we'll see you next time. But thanks for listening. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Cheers, everybody.